interactive. That's a lot more fun than just listening to me talk for an hour. So, if you do have any questions, comments, things you'd like to share, please feel free to, put up your hand or, I guess if you're on Zoom, put your comments or questions in the chat or, unmute yourself and we can address any of that as it comes up. So with that, we will go ahead and get started. So today's topic is about identifying and highlighting your transferable skills. So why are we talking about this? Why are we talking about transferable skills? First off, we have to talk about skills, right? In the job search, as you're looking for a job or switching roles or trying to advance in your career, your skills is what's going to allow you to do that, right? That's what employers are looking for. In any job, any job description or job application, there's gonna be a list of skills that you're trying to meet, right, in order to get that job. And it goes by a few different names, right? You've got foundational skills, key skills, core skills, hard and soft skills. All of these are basically the same, right? It's the ability to do something, to perform an action, whether that's programming a computer, cooking food, performing some sort of healthcare procedure. All of these are different skills, right? And all of these skills are what's going to let you, succeed in finding a job or advancing in your career. But today we're going to talk about transferable skills specifically. And whereas a lot of skills are, kind of specialized, right? Again, think, computer programming or in healthcare, outside of the healthcare field, there's probably not a lot you're going to be doing with, giving medication or drawing blood or things like that, right? That's all pretty specialized. But transferable skills are the skills and competencies that you develop, during your life experiences, your professional experiences, that you carry with you across all of your endeavors. These are skills that are relevant to pretty much any type of career that you're looking to pursue. Whether you're already in that field or looking to transfer from one field to another, the transferable skills are what's going to help you do that. Does that make sense to everyone? Great. So transferable skills are important for exactly that reason. These are skills that are valuable for pretty much any job, no matter what sector. Now, how many times have you seen, perhaps you're on Indeed or company website and you're looking at, let's say, an entry-level job, and it says, this is entry-level job, but you need, 1 to 2 years of experience, to get it, right? That's pretty common. And that sort of brings up the question, if I need experience to get a job, how do I first get that experience in order to qualify for the job, right? It's a bit of a catch-22, it's circular. And that comes up fairly often, and can be kind of frustrating. But that's where transferable skills come in. If you can sort of highlight and sort of build up your transferable skills, that means that you can sort of get past that, lack of experience, and it'll actually help you move into that job that you're looking to do. That's because employers look for people who can demonstrate a good set of transferable skills. They look for potential, right? Based on these skills, can you pick up, new skills in this field? It also helps you show potential in an interview, right? By demonstrating your essential skills, your soft skills. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. Basically, they help you stand out from the crowd. Now, the good news is a lot of these skills are, a lot of these things that we consider transferable skills, you've already got them. Whether you sort of realize it or not, you've probably already developed a lot of these skills just through your everyday life, right? Through going to school, through, hanging out with, working with friends and family, as well as any professional experience as well. All of that sort of contributes to your transferable skills. So let's any comments or questions on this? All right. So there's any number of things that can sort of qualify as transferable skills. A lot of times when we think of transferable skills, we think of things like, more sort of technical, right? Like computer skills. Can you use Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel? Can you use email? Can you, manipulate the internet? And yes, computer skills are absolutely a transferable skill that you will probably need no matter where you work. Something like language skills would be another one, right? If you're bilingual or multilingual, if you speak another language, that's probably going to help you, no matter what field you're in. Most fields do involve, working with people, diverse population. So having, those language skills are also a good one. But aside from the sort of some of those technical skills, if you Google a list of sort of top essential skills, top essential transferable skills, you're going to see something like this. This is just one example from the Skill Builder partnership, but I think it does a pretty good job of showcasing a lot of what employers are looking for. Let's take a look at this list here. They kind of break down the transferable skills into four categories, right? Communication, creative problem solving, interpersonal skills, and self-management skills. Let's just take a look at this list for a minute. Does anything on this list surprise you? Does it make sense? Do you sort of notice anything about it? What are your thoughts on this list right here?
Like very first, very surprising, like skill like listen. It seems like obvious, but I never thought that it can be like beneficial to put that you can listen and to see like other perspectives.
Yeah, exactly. That's sort of my thought too, right? When you sort of first see this, um, there's a couple things. One, there aren't really a lot of technical skills on this list. It's all sort of what we would consider soft skills. Not to say technical skills aren't important. If you've got them, it can certainly help. But it really does show you how important those soft skills are. And second, like you said, things like speaking, listening, creativity, that's something we do every day, right? Without even thinking about it necessarily. Um, but it turns out, these are actually sort of valuable skills. So let's walk through them for a bit, right? So under communication, we have listening and speaking. Starting off with listening, how is listening a skill? That's something, that's something you all are doing right now. Um, but as you probably have, if you sort of think back to your interactions with people, some people are good listeners, some people are not, right? There's a difference between someone who just kind of listens, maybe they might be listening, but they're not really responding to what you're saying. They're not asking good questions. They're distracted. They're on their phone, right? Someone like that isn't very effective at listening. And it means that certainly if it's in a professional environment, you're probably going to miss things or perhaps come across as disrespectful in some cases, right? Um, but it goes a little deeper than that, right? Um, if you're sort of, we're going to call it passively listening, uh again, you're not really going to internalize the information that is given to you, right? You're not going to sort of understand where the other person is coming from. You're just waiting for your chance to speak up, right? So someone who's an active listener, who does pay attention, who does sort of evaluate other people's perspectives, who takes notes, who really kind of is able to synthesize that information, that's a skill, right? That's something that not everyone can bring to the table, and that's sort of what makes it valuable. Everyone listens. Not everyone is necessarily a good listener, and people do notice that. So listening is definitely a good skill. Same with speaking, right? Some people are better speakers than others, and it doesn't even necessarily have to mean public speaking. A lot of times when we think about speaking, that is what we think about. And that is part of it. If you're looking for a job that requires a public speaking, that's fine. But again, it's a little more than that. Even if you're just speaking with one other person or in a small group, does what you say have an impact on people? Can you speak clearly? Can you make yourself understood? If someone is having trouble understanding, can you know, change how you speak or present the information to make it more accessible? That doesn't necessarily have to mean standing up in front of 100 people giving a speech. It is more so can you be understood and present this information effectively? That's sort of what it means to be a good speaker. And again, that's pretty valuable in a professional environment. Again, I think we can all probably think of people who, may not be the best speakers. Um, so that's where, so these two communication skills are pretty important when we're talking about transferable skills. And, you've already got them to an extent. Um, thoughts on that? Does that make sense to everyone? Great. Looking at this next one, problem solving. Is problem solving a skill? I would say yes, but a lot of times I think we sort of tend to think of problem solving and creativity, the next one in this section, as something that you kind of either have or you don't have, right? You might think, well, I'm not an artsy person. I can't, draw or sing or write. I don't have creativity. That's not me. I'm not a creative person. But creativity goes so much more beyond art, right? In fact, we'll just talk about creativity first here. Creativity at its core is more about, can you come up with new and creative ideas? In any kind of workplace or just situation in life, you're going to face challenges, right? There are going to be challenges, there are going to be barriers, there are going to be problems that that you need to solve. And that's where the creativity and problem solving comes in. Are you able to sort of analyze the situation and come up with a solution, even if the problem is pretty complex? That's where creativity comes in. That's where problem solving comes in. Can you identify the real issues, propose solutions, and then implement them, right? Creativity is just lateral thinking and coming up with sort of different or new solutions that maybe other people haven't thought of. And that's huge, right? Um, again, people who can solve problems certainly have an advantage over people who can't, right, or don't do it as successfully. So these are absolutely transferable skills that you can use in any career field. Um, comments, questions on that? All right. Moving on to the interpersonal skills, we have leadership and teamwork here. And again, leadership, it's certainly a skill, but I think a lot of times when people think of leadership, we think of it as something, it's a title, right? You're either a leader or you're not. You're a manager, a supervisor, right? You're a leadership position. And if you don't have that title or those responsibilities, are you really a leader? But again, it goes beyond that. Leadership essentially is, can you encourage others to contribute effectively to a shared goal? It doesn't matter whether you're a CEO, a shift manager, or just a regular employee. As long as you can sort of model sort of good behavior and encourage other people in their work, support them. That's demonstrating leadership. That's being a leader. Anyone can lead. You certainly don't need a title. Even sort of following the directions of another leader, right? Being a good follower, demonstrates a type of leadership as well, right? Again, you are contributing effectively and collaborating with other people to accomplish something. That's what leadership is, and that is something that that we all do, right? We work with others all the time to do any number of things, and so being able to do that effectively is leadership. As well as teamwork, right? Can you be a good follower? Can you follow instructions? If you have questions about the instructions, can you ask the right questions so that you understand what you need to do? If you see another solution or you see a potential problem, how do you bring that to someone else's attention? How do you sort of work around that, right? And can you work well with people? I'm sure we've all had frustrating or annoying coworkers or even friends or family members that we've had to interact with. Even if someone is frustrating to work with, can you still work with them, right? Can you still get things done even if other people aren't very cooperative, right? That's what teamwork is about. Yeah. Does that make sense? All right. Now, these last two are pretty interesting, and these oftentimes a lot of people are surprised to kind of see them on this list, right? We're going to call these self-management skills. Um, Staying positive and aiming high. Now, again, these seem like more of a mindset than a skill, right? You're either a positive person or a negative person, right? How is this a skill? And when we're talking about staying positive, what we're really talking about here is resilience, right? You probably have heard that phrase a lot. Essentially, even when things go wrong, and things always go wrong, do you you know, pick yourself back up and keep going forward even when things get tough? Or, do you quit? Do you withdraw? If you're the type of person that gets up, that keeps going, that keeps trying, that's resilience, right? That is staying positive. Um, and that counts for a lot. That positive mindset, that ability to look for new opportunities even when things go wrong, and sort of keep working, keep pushing forward. That is extremely valuable to any type of career that you're in, because you will encounter setbacks. Um, and employers like having someone that sort of demonstrates that mindset, and that where you can motivate yourself and maybe other people to keep going. um you know they can train everything else, but it's hard to sort of train that mindset, right? Like I mentioned before, they look for potential. So someone who exhibits these traits, you know has a pretty good advantage. Similarly with aiming high, and this is more sort of personal, but do you set goals, and do you stick to achieving those goals? In order to do any kind of work effectively, you need to know how you're going to get from point A to point B. Do you have a process for doing that? What is your long-term goal? What are the things you need to do in the short term to get yourself to that long-term goal? um, can you put those goals into a plan, and can you execute that plan? A lot of people can't, right? um, it's very easy sometimes on your way from point A to point B to get distracted or discouraged, or just go off in a different direction entirely. So someone who can stay focused and keep working to achieve those goals, that's a great asset for you. Again, with a lot of the technical stuff, computer programming, languages, things like that, a lot of that can be taught. You can go to school for it. You can learn on the job. You can do, training courses, and we'll talk a little more about some of those resources later. But the point is, a lot of that can be taught. The soft skills, communication, problem solving, interpersonal skills, self-management skills, those are skills that employers can't really teach, right? It's a lot harder. You certainly can develop them, and we will get into that. If you have these skills already, you can certainly improve them and make yourself better. But it is hard to teach. It is hard to teach these, right? How do you really teach someone problem solving, right? Sure, there are leadership classes and public speaking classes and things like that, but that only gets you kind of part of the way, right? A lot of this is kind of based on a mindset, and a willingness to learn. And that's something that's harder to teach. So, these soft my point here, and sort of the one takeaway is, a lot of these soft skills, these transferable skills, are extremely valuable. And you should, absolutely work to cultivate them. So while these aren't very easy to teach, you certainly can improve them, right? By doing certain things. And we covered this a little bit already, but we'll go back through it. In order to become a better listener, right? To practice that active listening, try just make sure that you're engaged. Any conversation you have, doesn't matter whether it's in the workplace or just with a friend or family member. Really focus on engaging in the moment with that conversation, right? Really think about the information as you're getting it. Does it make sense? If not, ask questions. Maybe recap what they say to make sure you understand. Even doing sort of little things like that will help you develop your active listening skills, right? But the focus should be on sort of engaging with someone and really trying to understand their perspective. Doesn't mean you have to agree with it, but understanding it. Same with speaking. Whenever you're speaking to someone, again, could be in a group, in a professional setting, could be informal, right? Make sure you speak clearly. Think about what you want to say before you say it. Um, Try to understand your audience, right? Who you're talking to, whether that's 100 people or just one person, and really think about the way that they're going to sort of most effectively receive the information, you know? Try to sort of tailor your speech to that person or persons. Just being mindful of that as you go about your your daily life and speak to people. That's how you can sort of build yourself up to be a a better speaker and sort of build this soft skills. With the problem solving and creativity, I mean, again, this is something that we encounter in our everyday lives. Essentially, it's about completing tasks, and whether we realize it or not, we encounter sort of problems, big and small, every day, right? Um, you know, for instance, and it could be pretty minor. A problem is, well, I went to go make breakfast this morning and realized I was out of eggs, right? That's a problem. How do I solve that? I need to go to the store and you know, and pick up eggs. But if I do that, it might make me late to get over to, Montgomery College to give this presentation. So, that's a relatively sort of routine problem that we have, right? Or, my car doesn't have gas. Can I, get gas in it without being late? So on. And a lot of times we sort of solve these problems automatically. So again, so the way to sort of develop this is, as you're going throughout your day, really be intentional with your actions, no matter what they are, right? Um, Sure, I'm going to the store to get eggs for breakfast, but maybe so this doesn't happen again, I try to think about what I'm going to have for lunch and dinner too, right? That's a pretty simple example, but it is an example of problem solving. I'm trying to think ahead and sort of plan accordingly. Because I was late getting started, I'm now stuck in traffic getting over to the college. Well, maybe instead of the way I usually go, there's a different way that I can take that'll help me avoid some of the traffic. Again, these are pretty simple ideas, and these are often things that we do without really thinking about it and sort of seeing it as an opportunity for problem solving. But the fact of the matter is we are problem solving pretty much all day, every day in our lives. So being intentional about that and sort of really thinking, here's the way I've always done something. Is there a way I can do it better? Right. If you can think about that and sort of apply that mindset to whatever you do, that will help you build these skills for problem solving and creativity. Comments or questions so far on any of this? All right. So moving on to the leadership, and we did talk about this already. Again, you can fulfill a leadership role regardless of if you are actually designated as a leader, right? No matter what your role is in a shared goal, as long as you can sort of demonstrate, if you can model sort of the correct behavior that you want everyone else to follow, that's being a leader. You can lead by example, right? It doesn't necessarily mean you have to tell people what to do. You can lead by example. You can collaborate with people. You can work with them, discuss the problem, figure out a plan. You can do that no matter if you're a manager or not. That's an example of leadership. Anytime you're interacting with a group of people, um, you know, think about ways to encourage them, to motivate them. It could be big, it could be small. Maybe you're with a group of friends and you're planning a party for the weekend. You can step up and take a leadership role there, right? Again, a pretty basic example, but you get the point. Um, it's a way to sort of practice and build that skill set. Same with teamwork. Are you respectful to everyone when you're communicating with them? Are you doing your part in any sort of group situation? How can you make a more effective contribution, a better contribution, a bigger contribution? Really being mindful and thinking about these person to person interactions will help you develop these skills. And finally, the staying positive and aiming high. We talked about resilience, and certainly easier said than done, but the fact of the matter is that we encounter problems and obstacles every day. Again, getting stuck in traffic, not restocking the refrigerator, again, pretty minor things, but those are still problems, right? They can still be frustrating. So, looking for opportunities when things get frustrating and when things go wrong, trying to find, the silver lining in something. No matter how bad a situation is, you can probably pull something out of it and learn from that for the next time, right? Focus on sort of, okay, something's not going my way. What can I learn from it? How can I do better next time? Rather than just saying, I'm frustrated, I'm upset, I'm gonna sort of completely disengage. Think about, okay, how do I keep moving forward, right? Try to foster that positive mindset, versus just a negative mindset. Maybe I don't have eggs for breakfast, so I find, a meal that doesn't require them, right? Just little things like that, where you keep moving forward, um, helps you kind of build that, and that really is sort of training your mind, right? Your sort of mental exercises to sort of generate that mindset. And it does get, it takes work, but it does get easier. Same with the goal setting. Be intentional about setting your goals. Really, really have a plan. I want to accomplish this. Here's what I need to do. Here's how I'm going to do it. Try to make a plan. Try to make plans as much as you can. Really think about your goals. How are these goals going to help you in the long term? What are you working towards? Everything you do should be in service of a goal. So, be mindful of that. Recognize what you're trying to achieve and make sure that the steps you're taking are relevant to those goals. Check in with yourself. A lot of this really does come down to sort of being very intentional and being mindful. But if you can do that, you can develop all of these transferable skills and have a lot of great success. Comments, thoughts, questions? All right, moving forward. So this was a study about that asked employers, a variety of employers, what skills were lacking in the workplace, according to them, right? Um, so out of all the employers and companies that responded, 59% of employers said time management and task prioritization skills are lacking in their employees, right? Time management, task prioritization, that kind of sounds like problem solving, right? Problem solving and creativity, and perhaps even aiming high. What goals are you trying to accomplish? What are you going to do first? Are you, effectively manage your time such that you can achieve those goals? 58% said management and leadership skills are lacking. And again, that's not just for the managers, but we see that right here, leadership and teamwork. That's something that not a lot of people are showing up with in the workplace. But 58% of employers say they need that. 55% of employers said teamwork was a gap in their skills. Again, right off this list here. How do employees work with each other? Again, it's much easier to train an employee to do something than to train them to, be respectful and get along with their colleagues in the workplace. And again, it's rarer than you might think. 55% said that was a gap. And 39% of employers said that problem solving is a gap in the skills. Again, problem solving and creativity. Are employees able to, come up with creative solutions and keep things going, even in the face of obstacles. And these are the most important gaps. Obviously, there are others, but as we can see here, the time management, leadership, teamwork, and problem solving are some of the most important gaps. And again, this lines up pretty closely with these transferable skills that we've discussed here. They don't really mention the technical aspects. These are all, what we would consider soft skills. So hopefully this illustrates the point that, working on these types of transferable skills can really help you as you pursue your career goals. Now, we are going to, technical skills are part of it, right? Transferable skills, and we are going to talk about that a little bit. One question that I've got a lot recently is around AI. Now, technology skills have always been important, right? Can you use a computer? Using email, using certain productivity tools like calendars, word processing software, spreadsheets, all that kind of stuff has always been pretty important. If you know Microsoft Word or, Google Docs, those types of programs, you can't go wrong. You're probably going to be able to use those no matter where you are. And sort of that digital literacy, that's always been important. But one of the newer sort of skills that people are looking for is AI. That is certainly the trend. And whether or not you know, whether or not you utilize, AI, pretty often in your daily life, or, just every once in a while, or maybe not ever, it's still important to sort of familiarize yourself with what's out there, no matter how much you use it. So, the AI, I will say, is a tool like anything else. It is not it you get out of it what you put into it, right? So the more you understand about it on sort of a deeper level, the more potential it has to help you and to sort of be a skill that you can leverage. Um, so, if this is something that you feel is applicable to you, and you want to, learn more about AI, try to familiarize yourself with the different tools available. And there's a bunch out there, right? ChatGPT is probably the big one, but you have things like Claude, you have Microsoft Copilot, you have what's the Google Bard, I think. Um, there's a few different programs like that, and it is worth, you know, exploring them and kind of seeing how each of them are different and what each of them can do. I think for the most part, you can access a free version of all of these tools. There are some paid features that you can use. You certainly don't have to do that. You can get away by using the free version. Um, but familiarize yourself with these tools and what they can do. Um, a lot of the sort of news and things like that come out around AI is, well, AI can replace a lot of jobs and things like that. That's a lot of what we're kind of hearing. Um, and that's potentially true, but only to an extent. I think we're kind of early on with sort of the AI trend, but you know, the fact of the matter is there are some things that AI cannot do and is nowhere near being able to do right now. So understanding how you can play that role, right? How you can use AI as a tool, but still bring that human element in is the best way to kind of understand transferable skills here, how to figure out your transferable skills in relation to AI. So, again, and we're sort of talking about the soft skills, things like curiosity, compassion, creativity, courage, communication. These 5 C's, as they're called, this is something that AI can't really do. You put something into it, it'll give you an answer, but it doesn't really have it can't really ask questions itself, right? It can't really, it can give you an answer, but it can't really give you the next thing, right? That's where humans come in. That's where you have to prompt it. It can give you the answer to one problem, but where's the next problem going to be, and how do you address that? That's something that we can do, and it can't really. Compassion and empathy, right? AI is a machine. It can sort of simulate that, but a lot of times you might be able to tell. It can't really simulate that human element of compassion or empathy or sort of understanding other people's perspectives. That's something that humans are still needed for. Same with the creativity. This kind of is similar to the curiosity and the problem solving. Again, sort of complex problem solving, sort of higher level thinking and predicting sort of what comes next, figuring out, different ways to use AI. That's where, the creativity comes in. Um, you know, a lot of people can use it to just, I've got a question about something, I'm going to type it into ChatGPT, get an answer, done. Is there a way to use it more, to use this tool more creatively? AI can't tell you how to do that, how to manage itself. Courage and communication, those kind of go together. Understanding, this goes back to sort of understanding your audience, right? who are, you request some sort of product from AI, who is this for? How are they going to receive it? How can it be tailored so that they understand it or can make the best use of it? A lot of times you can tell if something has been generated by AI, right? There's a certain style or vocabulary that they use, and it's kind of clear that it's not from a person. So, humans have to be in the loop there to smooth that out, to make sure that it does sound like it's, a person and sort of bring that human element into it. Um, Above all, you want to understand the why. AI can tell you what, but you have to understand, the why, the bigger picture. Does this make sense to everyone? So no matter, oh, go ahead. I see.
Yes, a lot. I'm from Ukraine, and for me, it's very hard to shape my thoughts. Um, and when AI just was released, for me, it was super wow. All my messages were generated through AI, and it sounds for me like amazing. But lately, I just tell what I want to text to another person's idea, and I ask, not
Mhm.
this way, not this way, no, and then I'm just, no, I will better write it on my own. And I'm finding very often when I give it tasks, and very often it's like so surface without like interesting ideas or something. And I was happy when it appeared, and now I'm also happy that I was so addicted and no longer that addicted, because I think that my ideas can be more interesting and deeper,
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
and it hallucinate a lot. I remember I help him. I am working like assistant for one woman. It's not like real
Mhm.
job, but I help him someone like with errands, and she sent me
Yeah,
to
yeah.
find a list of books, like 10 books she needed for project. She said, "Oh,
Mhm.
Victoria, can you find it like library, like all sources I can use like on
Yeah.
internet?" And I found like almost half of it like not exist.
Oh,
And then
because it was done.
I
Yeah.
had an idea.
Yeah.
Probably it was generated by, and I texted her. I'm sorry, but this like books as like they not exist. And she said, "Oh yeah, I asked ChatGPT," and she needed like
Yeah.
this for project. So it was like a nice toy, and now I'm not that. You probably sometimes like to find my grammar mistakes or something, but not that depth. I was scared in the beginning, but no longer.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for sharing it. And that's sort of a perfect example of what we're talking about here. AI can often be wrong, right? And it takes the human element, the human person to review it and spend time figuring out, how it's wrong and why it was wrong in the first place. Um, and sure, like you mentioned, it's easy to say, all right, ChatGPT, write me a message to someone, but at the end of the day, it has to sound like you. You have to go back in and make sure you review it and make changes. AI can't really edit itself as well as you can. Again, it's a tool. You sort of get out what you put into it. The more you kind of work with it and prompt it, the better results you're going to get. Now, that said, not everyone likes to use AI, and that is completely fine. You prefer to do everything yourself, not a problem. Um, I would still suggest, having an awareness of AI, if for nothing else than like some of the privacy considerations. I know that's a concern for a lot of people, and fair enough. So having an idea of, if you do use AI, figure out what the privacy, how the privacy settings work, what information is being shared with other people. Can you go in and erase information that you want to delete? Um, what does the tool remember for future conversations, and how do you manipulate that? So at the very least, I would recommend, for our purposes of identifying transferable skills, just having an awareness of what these tools can do, even if you don't really use them yourself.
I have a question. So I use AI. I like it. I
Mhm.
recognize that it hallucinates, but you can't take what it gives you and just use it at face value. You have to adjust it. But so I'm working on on the AWS AI practitioner
Mhm.
certification, and I want to put it on my CV. How do employers like view those certifications? especially, when they're new and
Yeah, I mean, I think it sort of depends on the employer, but AI is definitely the trend right now. So I think having those certifications is definitely a plus. And again, it sort of like some of these other ones, right? Everyone listens, but not everyone is sort of an active listener. I would draw a parallel with AI. Anyone can sort of go into AI and tell it to do something, but can you engage with it on a deeper level and make a better sort of product? And so you having that certification and that knowledge, I think, is what would set you apart from anyone who just puts something in AI and just accepts the outcome, accepts the result and just kind of leaves it at that. Does that sort of answer your question?
yeah, it does.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yep. And if you want, you can integrate into AI into your job search. It can be a tool. Again, you just have to make sure it sounds like you. All right. So we did talk about how to develop some different soft skills and things like that. But for a lot of these, both hard and soft skills, the technical skills, you know, there are plenty of ways to learn new skills and brush up on the ones that you do have. Obviously, you can get skills through work experience, right? Either through formal on-the-job training or just picking it up as you go along. So anyone who is working, try to again sort of be intentional and think, okay, what can I learn today? What can I do better that will make me more skilled? If I'm look for other opportunities, right? If you're comfortable taking on additional work, right? Speak to your manager, say, hey, I'm a front desk receptionist right now, but I'd love to get more into the data side. Can I help do data entry or put people's information into the system? That look for additional opportunities, in your workplace to learn new skills. Obviously, sort of formal education and training is always good. You can take classes. Montgomery College, for instance, has a lot of great, training programs for any type of career, especially IT. But you can do a lot of, self-paced and self-guided training as well. We'll talk about that a little more in a bit. Volunteer and internship opportunities are also great. Even though you're not getting paid, you're still learning something. Even if you're volunteering, let's say you're in IT, but you volunteer at a food bank on the weekends. What does that have to do with IT? Well, maybe not much, but it still gives you the chance to learn new skills, right? You are still interacting with people. You still have a chance to show leadership and teamwork. Goes back to those essential skills that we looked at. So, I cannot recommend enough, sort of volunteer opportunities, especially if you're, looking for work at the moment or in between jobs. Volunteering is always a good way to sort of gain new skills. There are a lot of free online resources. We'll talk about those on the next slide, but you can find a lot of stuff online. Take some with a grain of salt, of course. The internet is not 100% correct, as we all know, but there are a lot of great resources out there that you can use to, again, learn, at least give you an introduction to, pretty much anything. If you can do any sort of personal projects or hobbies, that's another great way to skill build. Let's take IT, for example. We are here with the Ignite Hub. If I'm looking to get into a help desk role, a computer repair person, maybe I, try to rebuild a personal computer on the side. Maybe I try to, take an old computer and, refurbish it, as a personal project. I'm not doing it for pay. I may not be doing it for work, but it's still something I can show people. Maybe I want to get into IT as a web designer, so I create my own website, right? Things like that are sort of tangible ways that you can demonstrate your skills to someone else, even if it's not in a work capacity. Same with hobbies, right? And in general, just everyday life. We went through different ways you can develop your skill sets, just by sort of being more intentional and really thinking about what you're doing and looking for opportunities to develop these skills. And we get that we get that every day. So, there's always opportunities out here for skill building. You just want to keep an open mind so that you can find them. I do want to touch on free online resources a little bit. And you will be getting a copy of this presentation with the links here. But so there are a number of websites and platforms you can use. Some websites have both free courses and paid courses. So if that's the case, you may need to filter for free options. If you'd like to pay for classes, you're certainly welcome to, but you can find a lot of this for free. A lot of these websites, because they are free, may prompt you to pay for sort of a premium tier, or they may prompt you to pay for a certificate of completion, something official. But you don't need to do that, right? If I take a programming course, let's say I want to learn Python, at the end of the course, I've learned, hopefully learned some Python, even if I have an official certificate or not, right? I can still put that I know Python on my resume. Whether or not I have an official certificate, may not matter. If you want one, great. You can put them on LinkedIn and things like that. Some people like them. But the point is, if you don't want to pay for any of this, you don't necessarily need to. There's a lot of good resources here. Allison.com, Coursera, and Udemy are sort of the three I like to recommend. These are excellent websites, and they cover a lot of different subjects, whether that's business, healthcare, IT, languages. You can even find, public speaking or communications classes on here. It really covers kind of the whole range of career fields. So, if you want to study for an IT certification, for instance, you can probably find, a class on here. If you want an introduction to healthcare terminology, you can probably find it here, and so on. GCF Global is a website. I think it's run by Goodwill, actually. This is more basic. If you're looking to sort of brush up on your basic computer skills, so like, if you want an introductory class to Excel, for instance, Microsoft Office, basic computer use, things like that. This is often a good place to start. They have sort of step-by-step tutorials that you can use to get a foundational level knowledge. For some of the more advanced stuff, you might have to go to Allison or Udemy, but for the basic level, GCF Global is not a bad place to start. Another good option is SkillUp. Now, this is actually through WorkSource Montgomery, which is a workforce agency in Montgomery County, and you can sign up for a free account with SkillUp on that website. Now, that mostly focuses on things like sort of business and IT. They have a lot of courses there, but it is free. The only thing is that once you sign up, you have, I think, 6 months worth of access. So if you do decide to use that to go that route, it is a good resource. You can get some certifications when you've done the classes, but you just want to make sure that you can commit to it so that you make the most of those 6 months. So I encourage everyone to take a look at these links, check them out. See if there's some skills on there that you may want to learn. Questions or comments on some of these resources? All right.
I'm gonna add about the Udemy. That if you go through, if you have like Montgomery County like library card, and you go to a library website, and then like online sources, and you can sign to Udemy and watch like any courses for free. Because usually you have to pay some money, not big money, but still pay, but through, and it's used like some system to log in. You still use your credential like to log into Udemy.
Yes.
But you add this course is for free.
Yes, that is an excellent point, and I thank you so much for bringing that up. Yeah, so Udemy, for instance, has a number of like paid courses, but if you have a library card with Montgomery County Libraries, you can access those courses for free, I believe. So it just really gives you it's such a great it is such a great resource. One thing that's not on this list that maybe I'll add before we send it out is LinkedIn Learning. Usually that's a paid premium option that you need to sign up for. But again, Montgomery County has I guess it's a subscription to it. So if you can use your library card to access it for free. So yeah, just starting with the library website actually is a great place to start. And they have a whole list of some of these platforms that you can use just by having a library card. So yes, thank you so much for bringing that up. It is a great resource. All right, so now that we sort of discussed what transferable skills are and how to build them up, how do you really, how do you highlight them to employers, right? Because that's really the goal, right? You want to show you want to be able to show employers what you can do. So first step is to identify your own transferable skills, and hopefully, everything we've talked about has given you some ideas about, skills that that you have. Again, a lot of times I think we tend to discount things, especially if they're soft skills, right? Speaking, listening, we think that's not really a skill. Well, hopefully now we see that in a bit of a different perspective. So, really think about what skills do I have, and how will they apply to this career or this job that I'm trying to get into. So, come up with a list of your own skills first and figure out which ones transfer. You can do that by, looking at job descriptions. You know, for instance, I'm going to use another IT example. If I'm going for help desk, IT support professional, sure, there'll be some technical stuff in there. It's nice to have a knowledge of operating systems and computer hardware and software, but a lot of that role is customer service, right? So it's talking with people, it's problem solving, it's providing information to people in a way that they can understand. So even if I don't have that technical background, but I have sort of the customer service side and the people skills, well, I can learn the technical stuff, and I'm bringing in my my customer service and people skills. An employer is gonna hopefully value that. So figure out what relates to these jobs. You can do it through job descriptions. There's also a few different websites you can use. ONET Online is a good one. It's through the Maryland Department of Labor. You can look up information there, but it has lists of different job titles and sort of career information. You can see what skills are often needed for certain types of roles. Don't necessarily focus on the job titles as much. Really focus on the job descriptions. Job titles can be misleading, right? If I'm only looking for, if I'm going on Indeed, let's say, and typing in help desk, I'm going to get some results, but I'm not going to get all of the relevant results, right? I'm going to get more results if I type in, IT support, right? It'll be the same type of role as help desk. It's going to be what I'm looking for, but it's a different job title. I'd have to go into the description to really figure out if that's a good match with what I want. Anyway, once you have your list of transferable skills, make sure to emphasize them in your resume and your cover letter. I like to have a skills section right at the top of a resume when I do it. My philosophy is that gives the recruiter or the interviewer or the manager, a quick snapshot of what you bring to the table. So, make sure you highlight those skills right up in the resume. And as you're just describing those skills, under your work experience or volunteer experience or education, try to give examples, right? Saying that you answered phones is great. Sure, that speaks to customer service and people skills, but answered 100 plus phone calls in a high volume call center environment, that's a little more detailed, right? Answered phones and provided information to people. Answered phones and helped the callers resolve issues or questions. Try to give that sounds a lot better, right? So try to give examples of your transferable skills and how you've used them. Same with the cover letter. The cover letter gives you the chance to really go into a little more detail than you can in a resume. So choose some of these transferable skills that you want to highlight, and you can give examples right there in the cover letter. Make sure that you highlight all of your relevant experience and are able to sort of reference that when you're applying for jobs. And experience, doesn't just have to be work experience. Again, if you volunteer, if you're part of a community group, if you have a hobby or do personal projects, that all counts as relevant experience that people might be interested in. So, don't restrict yourself to just, work that I've been paid for. That's not the full story. You have more skills that's just beyond that. And it is really important to sort of give yourself credit for your experience. So don't undersell yourself. I was working with someone a while ago, and I think she was like an elementary school teacher. I think she taught like third grade math or something. And I was working with her and said, okay, we're doing a resume together. And I said, well, okay, so, tell me what you did. You're a third grade math teacher. Tell me what you did. And she said, well, I taught, math skills to third graders. I said, okay, great. What else did you do? And she said, that's it. I just taught, taught math skills to third graders. And so we had to have a discussion around that, right? Because you know, teaching is so much more than that, right? She had to, maintain discipline in the classroom. She has to do the paperwork. She has to do lesson planning, curriculum development, grading. You have to interact with parents. You have to, identify the, specific needs of students and address those. There's so much more that goes into teaching than just, I gave a lesson, I gave an hour-long lesson in math skills, right? So really think about everything you've done and kind of give yourself credit for it. And finally, you always want to be thinking about how you can improve your skills. Always be looking for opportunities, whether that's taking a class or just, trying to be a better listener. You can do both, but always be thinking about how you can improve your skills and, you know, always be trying to do that. That's really gonna pay dividends when you're looking for a job or trying to advance in your career. All right. Looks like we're about the end of our session here. Any final comments or questions before we wrap up? All right. I'm going to go ahead and put this QR code on the screen, and I think we'll have a link in the chat as well. If you could take a minute, just fill out this workshop survey. We use the feedback to improve our offerings in the future. So, we definitely appreciate what you have to say. It's all anonymous, so just take a minute to fill it out. That would be great. And while you're doing that, I'm going to stop this share for a second. And I'm going to talk just a little bit about the Ignite Hub. So as I mentioned, my name is Chris. I work with Career Catchers, and we're partnered with the Montgomery College Ignite Hub. Now, this is a great resource for individuals who are in the IT field or looking to explore the IT field. There's a lot of great workshops and events. You can see our upcoming career workshops. So I'll be back here on October the 14th, for instance, to talk about resume writing. Hope to see you there. But in addition to the career workshops, there's a lot of sort of IT-focused workshops as well. There's a fireside chat series. The next one will be in October. And it's going to be around sort of different IT topics. Looks like one in October is about cybersecurity. There's also a lunch and learn that's coming up next Thursday with some guest speakers coming in, professionals in the IT field, as well as a number of other ones. I highly recommend this IT Career Pathways workshop if you are looking to get into the IT field. Eduardo gives a wonderful overview of the different career pathways you can take if you're trying to go into IT, and what the different certifications and skills you need to do each of those. There's also going to be a navigating the DMV tech job market, which should be very interesting. That's going to be in October. But if you live in the DMV area and are looking for a job, this would definitely be worth attending. So it's ignitehubmc.com. I definitely recommend checking it out and trying to attend some of these events. The other service, so I'm here every month to do the workshops, but I also provide one-on-one career coaching through the Ignite Hub. So I can, if you're looking for a job and you live in Montgomery County, if you're a Montgomery County resident, we can potentially work together one-on-one. I can do things like help you update your resume, identify appropriate job opportunities, prepare for interviews, find different trainings, depending on what you're interested in, all that kind of support that goes into finding a job. So if that's something you feel like you're interested in, you can go in here to make an appointment. You can also reach out. And actually, what I'm going to do is put my email on here so you can just reach out to me directly. But you can reach out and we can set up a time to meet either virtually or in person. Let me just, actually, I can just stick it in the chat here. So you can shoot me an email and and we can talk. So with that, thank you so much, everyone, for taking some time out of your day again. I hope you got some good information, and we'll hope to see you at the next one.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for coming.